You're listening to the Old But Not Out podcast.
As a young guy, full of testosterone, when you're going out, what's your primary objective?
Welcome to Old But Not Out, the podcast where we celebrate the wild, wacky and wonderful journey of middle-aged men. I'm your host Andy Barker, with Russ McDonough and Matthew Cooper. And together, we're diving into the uncharted territory of life after 40. Navigating topics from dad jokes to dad bods, from rediscovering passions to handling that midlife crisis with a smile. Old But Not Out podcast is intended for entertainment purposes only. Some of the language may be a little bit spicy, and you should always consult with a professional for any health or life advice. Now, on with the show. So Russ, Matt, dad bods and muffin tops, what is that all about? I'm really not enjoying this getting old, guys.
I might be sounding mega controversial here. I appreciate that as we get older, right, we all kind of like, it becomes a little bit harder to keep the weight off. You know, if you have one too many kind of like cakes, or you can even look at cake and you put that weight on, or it feels like it. But my opinion on this is, yes, it might get harder, but it's other external factors which mean you're putting weight on. And one of those factors could be, dare I say it, laziness. Now, I'm not having a go at laziness, but what I am saying is, as you get older, you've got other things pulling you. You know, if you hit your 40s, you're a bit more career driven. You've got family now. You've got family, potentially kids. You've got other factors pulling you in all different directions. So maybe the laziness is like, when you're in your 20s, you're like, I'm going to go down the gym for an hour. When you're in your 40s, you're like, you know what? I just want to sit down and have a bit of time to myself. Potentially.
I mean, it's just a case of less responsibility when you're a younger man, younger individual. You know, you've got, as you say, you've got those stresses of life.
Yeah, and what about the other thing? When you're in your 20s, right? What as a young guy, full of testosterone, when you're going out, what's your primary objective?
Well, to drink and
to what? Go on,
meet
say
women,
it.
Meet women.
Meet maybe some promiscuous women. So when you're younger, you're like, you want to look good naked, essentially. So you're like, right, I'm gonna hit the gym, because when I go out on a Friday night, you've got a more chance of maybe not meeting future misses, but you've got more chance of meeting a young lady who wants to spend the night with you. When you hit 40, have you got that same desire to look good for your partner anymore? Like in some relationships, some marriages, they're kind of like, you know what, I've bagged my missus, I don't really care anymore. Like that could be a factor as well. What about you, Matt? Like, do you like, we were chatting earlier and you said you enjoy your rowing. Why do you do that rowing? Is that for physical? Is that for like, so you look better and you can keep a bit of weight off, so that improves your quality of life? Or is some of that sort of like mental? Like, do you find it helps with your mental health as such?
It's all of it.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, to me, I do it in the morning because it sets me up for the day. Mentally, makes me more alert. Physically, I feel better for it.
And you look better naked.
Maybe from sort of the chest up. For me, anyway, I tend to put on body fat around the belly. Mm-hmm. So although I do exercise and I do my abdominal exercises, it's still there. But I think I've always been sort of...
You're quite a...
stocky guy.
Stocky, that's exactly the word I was going to use, actually. I definitely wasn't going to use any other type of descriptive word. That's awesome, though, mate, that you've got the discipline as well to get up. Like you said, you got up at 5.
Yeah, well, today I did, but there's been instances in the past in my previous job I used to get up at 4 and do all my preparation for the day, and then at 5 be on the rowing machine, and I'd finish at 5:35, and then I'd have my breakfast, and I'd be out the door at 6:15, start work at 7:15. So I'd had a set routine, and by the end of the day, depending on what day you've had, you know, sometimes doing a morning workout is better for you than the evening one. You know, if you've had stressors, if you're tired, if you've got plans, you know, that works for me.
And you said, like, you find it helps with your mental clarity, your mental health.
Yeah, for sure. So
do you reckon if you didn't do it in the mornings, do you find that if you don't do your phys, whether it's rowing or whatever, do you find that if you don't do that in the morning, you have a shittier day? You're maybe more prone to, I don't know, flash at someone, or you're more irritable?
I mean, I can get through the day with not exercising in the morning, but I just feel better in the day when I do it in the morning. I mean, I can exercise in the evening, but I prefer to do it in the morning because of the benefits throughout the day.
So Just jumping in quickly, because we've gone on to mental health there. There's an interesting statistic here. Nearly 3/4% of missing adults are men, and they're sitting within the 40 to 49 years age group. I mean, I can speak from personal experience. I've had my own mental health wobble. Not all to do with my past job. A lot of it's to do with the pressures of being a family man and, providing. How are you finding it's affecting you guys?
Well, I can add to your statistic there, Andy, in the fact that in 2019, 4,268 male suicides were recorded in the UK, and that's from mentalhealth.org. And on top of that, there's a lot of statistics I've researched, but another one is 87% of rough sleepers in the UK are men.
So how are you finding your own mental health at the moment? Are you struggling? Russ, what about yourself, mate?
I'm doing all right, mate. I've never been sort of felt like I've been going down a dark alleyway, or dark alley, should I say. One thing I will say is I think as you get older, like maybe this is just my personal experience of it, is I find I tend to overthink a lot of potential situations. So if I'm going somewhere, I'll be like, my mind will get crazy active, and it will start thinking, what happens if this happens? What happens if they say this, etc. And it doesn't stop me from doing said thing, like going somewhere or meeting new people. But I think when I was in my 20s, there was almost like a naivety. I was like, I'm just going to turn up and I'm going to fuck some shit up. I'm very lucky I've never suffered with any mental health issues, not at least that I would say. But there are certain, my brain works a different way now. And like I say, one thing, maybe I get a little bit more anxious about upcoming events and that. What about you, Matt?
Well, to be honest with you, Ross, I mean, I've always suffered with anxiety. I did have mild depression years ago, but I got over that with cognitive behavioural therapy and
Wow.
some counselling. But I have to be honest. I mean, in the workplace, when I was in the army, I was very badly bullied fairly recently as well by managers above me. It was a very, very difficult time because I had those individuals bullying me, but then I had management above me thinking I was being incompetent as well. And to be honest, it was a very isolating place, a very dark place. And I mean, I had to turn to my dad for help. I used to call him and say, look, and tell him what was happening, because he'd been in the army, although back in the 60s, so he kind of understood what I was telling him. And I honestly didn't feel that there was anyone within the workplace in the army that could support me. It was a really, really dark time.
Oh, mate, I can see the pain on your face. Like, I feel emotional. You just tell me that story.
Yeah, I still think about it now. I mean, you say just a minute ago how you're different to when you were as a younger man. I tend to reflect more about the past, dwell on the past more than I ever did as a younger man. When I was a younger man, I was kind of busy doing young man things, but as I've got older, I tend to dwell on it, which is not a good thing.
Wow, mate, I don't know what to say. That took a turn, that. I thought I was going to come here and just give you like a bit of shit, but now I'm like, I feel like I need to hug you.
I feel I need a hug.
Shall we hug it out afterwards?
You'll hug it out, yeah.
And I'm not really a hugger, but for you, Matthew.
I look forward
Today,
to
Matthew, I'm going to be a hugger.
Matthew, thank you, mate. I mean, you just speaking about there has helped me, because I've been down a similar path myself. I've experienced bullying in the workplace. It's not nice, and for you to actually be able to stand up here and talk about that openly, well done, mate. Hats off to you, and hopefully that will help other people. We're going to draw that to an end this week. If you've been affected by anything that you've heard today, there are websites out that you can help. For example, mind.co.uk. And thank you very much for listening. That's a wrap for this episode of Old But Not Out. Thanks for joining us on the maze of middle age. Remember, age is just a number. We may be getting older, but we're not out of the game yet. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review on your favourite podcast platform. You can always stay connected with us on social media. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at Fieldcrafting UK.